Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.
Welcome to Sports Management Podcast, where you will hear interesting sports management professionals share their stories, experiences, and passion for the sports management industry. I am your host, Marcus Philipsson. Welcome to episode 189 of Sports Management Podcast. Today's guest is Ben McFadyean. He's a football journalist, translator, and writer with specialization in German football, particularly Bundesliga, which he has been following since the 1990s. We spoke about the evolution of German football, his love for Borussia Dortmund, promoting German football in the UK, the 50+1 rule, his contribution to several books, what he has learned from interviewing elite athletes, and much more. Ben McFadyean, welcome to Sports Management Podcast.
Great to be here, Marcus. Thanks for reaching out to me.
It's great to have you on the show. You are a football journalist, translator, and a writer with a specialization on German football and maybe in particular Bundesliga. So also a PhD researcher. So can you tell us a little bit about what it is that you do on a daily basis?
Okay, great. So for the last 13 years or so, I've been focused on German football. Essentially, it was an interesting experience because I was out volunteering in Ethiopia, working on a football project with Aston Villa, and I basically had the chance when I came back. It was when Borussia Dortmund basically reached the Champions League final in 2013 to set up a big event for Dortmund fans in London. And it just came at exactly the right moment. And basically, we had a huge, what we call public viewing in Germany, or just massive screening, which was going to be really huge at the time. We were planning on taking over a park in London and so on. And very much like what Borussia Dortmund did in 2024, where they basically did take over a park at Hyde Park Corner, and they had about 50,000 people there. So that was our plan. And essentially, what we ended up having was a bar on 2 floors with about 700 people, and a massive barbecue, and some former players came down and so on, and big screening and so on. And I just realized that, BVB weren't going to go away. And for me, it was just an obvious thing to do, basically. I just felt at the time that because I'd lived in Dortmund, my stepfather was from Dortmund. I'd been watching Dortmund since I was a small child. And I could see that the yellow and black flame had really caught a light in England, and that people were going to start really loving that club. And I was really, really excited by that. So essentially, I started a fan club, the first English fan club of Borussia Dortmund in London. And I was already in my 30s there, so I really wasn't thinking about fan clubs or fans or supporters or anything like that. In fact, to be fair, I hadn't really been to many live games for a few years, even in Dortmund. And I guess, the flame kind of caught me as well. Even though we lost the Champions League final, I was totally thrilled by all these black and yellow guys from Germany coming over to the bar and having a great time. And we had 2 TV channels. Eurosport was one of them. The other one, I'm not really sure who it was, but it was just totally thrilling, to be honest with you, Marcus. And the fan club really did really well. And I've run it for the last 11 years. And basically, it's we had up to 300 members joining up. And, we had the normal things, scarves and membership cards, and a Facebook group with 15,000 people on it, and our own podcasts and other things which we're going to discuss. But essentially, it just came at the right time. I guess it was, a good time in terms of the internet, in terms of, doing online businesses, having a global reach, being able to develop merchandise and sell it internationally, and also working with a brand, Borussia Dortmund, who were hungry to expand beyond Germany. And there are now 9 fan clubs in England of BVB. So, I guess you could say that we were the grandfather of Borussia Dortmund fans in England.
Wow, that's exciting. And great to see that it triggered on after the first fan club. There became more. So I mean, England obviously loves football with the English Premier League and everything. So how hot is Bundesliga in England when they have so strong football league themselves?
Yeah. I guess, I mean, I never really took the wider landscape of football clubs into account. I always knew that Bundesliga was something different. Borussia Dortmund was something different. Südtribüne was something different, the yellow wall. And that we had an authenticity to German football, including because of the 50+1 and the fact that members and fans own the football clubs, that was always going to have a USP, a unique selling point that would appeal to fans of Manchester United, Liverpool, Arsenal, Tottenham, and so on. And from that perspective, with my own marketing background, I was absolutely spot on. And I had a perfect partner with Borussia Dortmund and their international department who really wanted to achieve exactly the same kind of thing. So yeah, it was really just the authentic values was what we were selling, and what we are selling and what we're promoting basically is being part of something authentic, genuine, and grounded, really grounded in the football landscape. And I guess we had reservations about maybe some issues to do with Germany, German culture, German language, historical issues, but I always felt that Ruhrgebiet, the Ruhr Valley, the industrial area of Germany, it just has something so cult and so cool and genuine and really working class that it just had to be the right thing to be doing at the right time, in a time when in England football was becoming more and more plastic, more and more fake, in my opinion, and more about just spending lots and lots of money, being a customer, and fans having literally no influence at all on the game. So yeah, I'm absolutely thrilled to see how Bundesliga has grown, and the love for Borussia Dortmund, which now has 1,000 fan clubs around the world, and that's really incredible. I mean, to think that it's now the fourth biggest football club in the world with 250,000 members. When I was a youngster, I first joined Dortmund as a 16-year-old. We must have had maybe 20, 30,000 members. So it's a phenomenal success, and it's a great, great, great story for the Ruhrgebiet, for the industrial heartland of Germany.
Definitely. So how close are you working with the club itself when you're on the fan side, and because you're promoting their club in UK? So you mentioned you were talking to some department there. So how close is that relationship?
Yeah. So basically, for 9 years, I was fan club president, and I built up what was this international fan club of Borussia Dortmund, the Borussia Dortmund Fan Club London. And the way we launched it was we had our own yellow and black taxi in London with BVB09 on the front. And we crowdfunded that and raised money from all over the world, basically, to do it. So you could see already at that point that people were loving the whole idea of there being a BVB fan club and BVB being present in London, and I was amazed. We were over our crowdfunding was oversubscribed by 104%. We managed to get Puma on board, who gave a very substantial sponsorship. We got all the main sponsors of Dortmund to support with that, from Brinkhoff's beer to Die Continentale and so on, and many other corporations. But much more than that, we actually managed to get the fan clubs on board. Fan clubs from Vietnam, from Australia, from Germany, different parts of Germany. I mean, it was amazing to think that, people were just loving it. We got some really good press coverage, and the taxi was on television on a number of channels. And just to see it when it actually came about, this beautiful yellow and black London taxi with a yellow and black Union Jack on the roof. We were actually approached by a computer games company who wanted to make a video game of the taxi. And then we were actually approached by a company that makes small cars, like toy cars, who wanted to make the taxi. So, and then the culmination was driving out to Dortmund in the taxi to go and meet the players of Borussia Dortmund. And just driving through France and Belgium and Holland and so on with the yellow and black taxi, it was just a super cool experience. So I guess you could say that we worked hand in hand with BVB's International Development Department, and we're just able to basically build a dream, I guess. But the dream, as with so many things with football and also with Borussia Dortmund, is really down to you as a fan in terms of your own initiative and what you want to achieve, and how you show your fandom, how you've shown your love for the club, basically. Because at the end of the day, the club are never going to tell you how to do it. They're never going to tell you what they want you to do. They're just going to, maybe facilitate your dream if it's something that they're able to do, or if they're able to provide you with something. But at the end of the day, with that many fan clubs and that many fans, we could just reach out and just find, a lot of support, basically, for our dream.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So, I mean, the fan engagement piece is really important one, and it become more and more so, I think, in the later years. But you've been following the game now since the 1990s. So how do you feel like the fan engagement from the clubs have evolved over the years?
Well, I mean, Borussia Dortmund's international fan department has now, I think, 10 or 12 employees, which that compares it massively favorably to English clubs. For example, my friend Mark Brindle, who's the supporters liaison officer at Arsenal, there's one of him for Arsenal, plus some part-time assistants and so on. And Dortmund have 12 guys working there in the department, guys and girls. So, I mean, it just shows the priority level that they actually give to football, to international fans and fan clubs. And it's been very, very successful. I mean, if you think about it, it's been a huge achievement because they've expanded by, 5 times the amount of fan clubs in the last 10 years. So I think Dortmund gives a very high priority for international growth. And they've also opened an office in Singapore. They've offered a marketing office in New York. I mean, I think Dortmund take it very seriously. They've got a business development officer in China. They've got a office, as I said, New York. They've got one in Singapore. They've now brought on the former player who was also a football manager. His name escapes me right now. Who played in the 1997 Scottish player who played in the 1997 Champions League final. But basically, they're expanding, they're in the business, they're making it happen, they believe in it, and they've got fan clubs all over the world right now. And it's absolutely incredible to see how committed Dortmund are to really building a worldwide brand of football and how successful they've been as well. I mean, in my time alone, I've probably took 50, 60 opportunities to go on radio, television, articles. I mean, I learned on the job, basically. Whenever Dortmund said to me, hey, we've got an interview with a newspaper from Singapore or a newspaper from the States or whatever, I just did it, basically. I was just the English-speaking guy who was out there speaking, basically, about BVB and just totally loving it and having a great time and just rocking it. And the guy I was thinking about is Paul Lambert, of course, that most people will remember him very well. Paul's over in Singapore and he's basically developing the Asia-Pacific partnerships. They've got partnerships in Japan, they've got partnerships in Australia and so on, basically with feeder clubs who want to run academies and so on based on the BVB model.
And I mean, from your side, you have become the guy who promotes German football in UK and BVB maybe in particular. Do you like to wear that hat?
Well, I think essentially that it started off for me with BVB, and I just, throughout all the years that I had these opportunities where I had things to do, like, for example, organizing a Legends game of the Borussia Dortmund official Legends team when they came to London. We played in FC Sheffield, the oldest club in the world, in 2018. And that then gave me more exposure to their sponsors like Puma and so on. And I was really enthusiastic about the chance to organize something like that with the fans, we basically brought together fans from all over the United Kingdom to organize that. And we basically had a team which was made up of different fan clubs from different parts of the country, and we had a fantastic day. And I really got involved in everything from designing the shirts that we wore, to organizing the event, to, just really, I mean, getting involved with everything, the marketing, the promoting, the promotional video, highlights video, doing the commentary on the match afterwards. It was totally thrilling, and just really exciting to be spending a weekend with the legends, the former players and so on. So I really can't argue. I mean, absolutely fantastic experience, Marcus.
That's great to hear. So, I mean, you have an interesting profile. I mean, you're an academic, you're pursuing a PhD, you're a journalist, and you also have some PR background. So you're really able to, look at this from many different angles, so to speak.
Yeah, I feel it definitely does, because essentially when all threads come together, you've really got something special. There's a saying, I don't remember who, I'll probably misattribute it, but do something you love and you'll never work a single day. And I think that that's kind of how it's felt for me the last 10 years. It's all kind of evolved. So essentially, out of my own love for football, I played football for 20 years, and my own love for BVB and German football, I basically was able to initially create like a standalone product, if you like, with the fan club and the podcasts, really just with the intention of introducing people more to German football and Borussia Dortmund and the culture of Borussia Dortmund and the players and former players and the history of Dortmund and similar. And then basically, I then I kind of realized at some point that I wouldn't be able to be a fan forever, and the fan club would never be able to be a full-time gig. So I realized at that point that I had to kind of choose something. And initially, my first choice was to do an MA in translation studies, German to English, with a focus on football literature and localization and similar, which I did at the University of Portsmouth successfully. And I then became a highly specialized translator of German football literature. And I started working on the biography of Hans-Joachim Watzke, who is the CEO of Borussia Dortmund. And I went on to other projects and localization projects, including with Borussia Dortmund, translating them. And essentially from there, because I came from a PR and marketing background, as you said, I was able to use a lot of the skills that had come on board in terms of being asked to do television work, do radio work, do podcasts, do YouTube programs and so on, and then start generating those myself, initially in the form of a podcast myself, but then in the form of writing articles, writing features. And if you like, I mean, I guess you could say I'm very, very entrepreneurial, very, very driven, simply with my singular message, which is essentially have people understand German football culture better and basically get closer to it. Remember, of course, that I've also been doing the ticketing as well through the fan club, and that hundreds of fans have gone through me out to Dortmund, and I've been helping them with all aspects of the travel, from their tickets to arrangements and so on, and using my fluent German and my contacts in Germany. So basically, it's been really all-encompassing. But what I'm finally left with is the fact that I'm becoming very much a specialist writer on German football and translator. One of a kind, I guess you could say.
Yeah, definitely. As a journalist, you have interviewed many sports stars and players over the years. What are some learnings that you have taken from that?
That's a wonderful question. So, I mean, it's been an incredible decade of work, going from being a fan to activist to journalist. I think life has just pushed me forwards. And when people see you're coming at it with so much enthusiasm and so much love and dedication, then it's like a little snowball that just gets bigger and bigger. So I guess maybe the first time, maybe 7, 8 years ago, I had a chance to interview Jörg Heinrich and Martin Kreh, who won the Champions League with Borussia Dortmund. And that was just a coincidence, basically. There was a big event at the Westfalenstadion, Signal Iduna Park. And basically, I was just given the chance there to do my first ever interview. And I just felt that their story of the German players in English needed telling. And as somebody who's able to speak English and German fluently, I was able to basically be a voice for the players. So I would often do interviews in German and then basically translate them into English and then write them up or basically put them on the podcast. And what have I learned? I've learned that high achievers in any field of life are high achievers. They are people who are dedicated. They're people who are focused. They are people who are 100% driven to achieve results. But above all, they are people who see determination and see focus and ambition in another person as well. And they know if they're dealing with somebody who is similar to them. And basically, you can gain their respect and appreciation, but you have to treat them in a certain way, because if they are a player, let's say, who's playing week in, week out, they're training really hard, you have to almost come from a player background yourself. Thankfully, I played as an amateur for 20 years, so I know the rigors of training and working together and playing on the pitch, etc. And so you have to relate to them as somebody who understands where they're coming from, but you also have to persuade them that you're not just respectful of them, but you're also somebody who can operate on the same level of commitment and ability in your field. And that's what comes across really well in interviews with certain players, is that they will basically they will say to you things like, well, as a journalist, you also have to bring a level of determination. You have to bring a level of discipline and commitment and so on. And what you have to learn, essentially, when you're interviewing somebody like that is you can't be starstruck. You can't be overwhelmed by the moment. Oh, my God. When I met Diego Armando Maradona at the FIFA World Football Awards, I couldn't be overwhelmed by that opportunity to talk to somebody who was the world star of football at the time. I just had to remember I've earned the right to be here at the World Football Awards, FIFA World Football Awards. I've earned the right to talk to Maradona. I've earned the right to interview him. And it's just hard work. It's sheer graft. It's sheer determination that has got you to that point. And that's why you're there, and that's why you're doing that job. And so basically, at the end of the day, when you're interviewing people, sure, you're a fan. Sure, you're excited to be talking to them. But at the end of the day, how you got there is similar to they themselves, which is hard work and determination and discipline and effort. And I think that's ultimately the bottom line, basically. And then there's one more thing, which is no matter how big the stars are that you're interviewing, as a journalist, you have to remember that's all you are. You're just a journalist. You're not like them. You're not a player. So, it's a very, very fine balance between, on the one hand, being confident enough to know that you deserve to be there, but on the other hand, also not thinking of yourself as being on the same level with somebody who's basically paid millions of pounds to do the job. And I think the job of being a journalist is actually a very, very difficult one. It's probably the hardest aspect of everything that I do.
And I mean, you have mentioned the fan club and the podcast, but so many more things. And obviously, you have written a lot of pieces, but also contributed to 2 books, Bundesliga Blueprint and The Defiant. So, what was that like to help write these 2 books?
Yeah, that was beautiful because basically the Bundesliga Blueprint that was written by Lee Pry. So England's very much a country of trends, and Bundesliga became incredibly trendy live on television in the UK. And we can also see second and third Bundesliga, Dritte Liga games also on YouTube and so on. So basically, it really became a thing. Borussia Dortmund became a thing in England. We got a lot of people buying the shirts, watching the games, going out to Germany. And Borussia Dortmund, which I was happy to a couple of years later by Uli Heese, which is basically a book about how the Borussia Dortmund Asengli won the 2018 Daily Telegraph Sports Book of the Year. And it was about a German club. So I guess that you could say that when tackling the subject of German football, tackling the subject of German football clubs and the German way of doing things, a couple of years later, Jonathan Harding wrote a book called Mensch, which is all about basically the uniqueness of the German approach to coaching. Terry DeFellin, a couple of years later, wrote a history in black and yellow, the history of Borussia Dortmund. So in respect to The Defiant, that is a book written by Chris Lee, who himself has a wonderful podcast, which I totally recommend, called The Outside Right. And The Defiant is a book about, and I think that's particularly poignant in this exact moment, about football's fight against fascism, extremism, right-wing extremism, and racism. And basically, he asked me the fight in Germany against, and these right-wing parties are basically European countries. So I think it was, whilst Chris Lee's book talks about the fight against extremism going back all the way to the 1940s, which is the time of the National Socialists, the Nazis in Germany, and indeed the collusion, let's say, between certain German football clubs and the National Socialist Party. We also then move on to chapters about extremism in terms of right-wing hooligan elements and so on, which Dortmund has had to fight over the years and has had to deal with. But essentially, it's about activism, and it's about clubs basically working to find the common ground for football as a message of peace, I would say. And I think that's something so very much more than just a sport, Marcus.
Definitely. In the times we're living right now, that's very hot topic, very relevant.
I really do feel that, actually, because I think that football is a global language. I mean, football is the only sport that was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. And it's just one of those things which basically reaches out to 2-3 billion people around the world. And it's a common culture. I worked in Africa and Ethiopia in an orphanage there. As I said, we did a project with Aston Villa, which they sponsored. And you could just see that, you buy a football, and we were out there building football places for people to play football, changing rooms and developing things and so on. And you could just see that, even these children in the orphanage with HIV, who have nothing in this world, you give them a football and they're out there for 2 hours having a fantastic time. And to me, to be able to facilitate something like that was a very, very beautiful thing. So I think that sometimes maybe money is too much of a priority for football. And I think that at the end of the day, as we saw in the pandemic, football without the fans is absolutely nothing whatsoever. It really is a grassroots sport. And that's why I think, in a time when you've talked about things like European Super League and other things, it's so important to have a football pyramid where people like myself, even in my own childhood, can work their way up from playing in a little small club to one day perhaps being part of a club like Borussia Dortmund or other big football clubs, Arsenal, Liverpool, and so on. So I think that, fan activism and the true down-to-earth grassroots initiatives of fans, and which you see so authentically in Germany in terms of people being able to play instruments, sing, show their enthusiasm, show their fan culture, put out their flags and so on. That's what it's really about. The game, whether you're a player or a fan, has to be about you being able to participate in the narrative, in the culture of sport. And I think that's exactly what we've seen over the years has been eroded in countries like England, where too much money has got involved and clubs have been basically transferred from one owner to another with the sheer intention most of the time of just making more money. There have been other examples, but that is a particularly bad example. Let's take, for example, the Glazers buying Manchester United. Yes, they brought in money. The club has been able to expand, etc. There are now plans to build a bigger stadium, but at the same time, at what cost? How highly leveraged is the football club, and how much of a say do football fans in England really still have in the game? So, yeah, I'm very much enthusiastic about German football, and I try to get that message out every single day in whichever way I can, whether it's a podcast, a contribution to an article, a YouTube program, the translation of books, of texts, etc. I guess I just live Bundesliga very, very much every single day.
Yeah, and I mean your passion shines through, right? Everyone can hear that you're very passionate about this. You mentioned like with how much say does the fans of Manchester United have, for example. I think in Germany you have, like in Sweden, you have the 50+1 rule, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, we have the 50+1 rule, which has been a very hot topic, and it's been something which I've had many chances to go out to football clubs and talk about. I've been out to Oxford United, Cambridge United, Gosport Borough, smaller clubs, and basically had the chance to do small lectures on that and basically talk about what it is. 50+1, I mean, as you know, Marcus, from Sweden, it's the glue that holds German football together. It's basically a limiting statute that essentially says that clubs will always remain in the hands of the members. And there are only three exceptions to that in Germany. Um, I think they're well known, but Red Bull Leipzig is one of them. RB Leipzig, Rasenball Leipzig, I should say. And yeah, I mean, it's the glue that holds it together, basically, because it's the glue that says you are not a consumer, you are a fan, you're a member, you have a stake in the game, you have a stake in decision making processes at this football club, and it's your football club. And I think that sense of ownership, that sense of participation is literally, on a different planet compared to just simply buying your season ticket for a vast amount of money a lot of the time here in England. I mean, I'm very lucky because my local club, Portsmouth FC, is a very old historical club with a beautiful old stadium, Fratton Park, and so on, where things are still cheap and it's in the championship in the second tier and so on. But a lot of English fans don't have that privilege. They're going to clubs like Arsenal and Manchester United, where they're paying vast amounts, I mean, thousands of pounds for their tickets. And basically, we don't have a fan atmosphere. We don't have a fan culture in the stadiums, in my opinion. You know, English fans go out to Germany and they think they're in South America. They just love it, and 50+1 is the thing, really. It's what makes German football so unique. So that is worth fighting for.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. Because as a fan, that you have something to say and to be able to make change, and not just for someone with a large wallet to come in and buy everything.
Absolutely right. I mean, you take an example of Blackburn Rovers, which were bought by as an industrialist who was a passionate guy who loved the football club, and he made them champions at a cost of hundreds of millions of pounds. I mean, you know, these are one-off examples, but most of the time, basically, English clubs are just being moved around from one owner to the next. And as much as I'm a patriotic Three Lions fan, a fan of the English national team, and I think our national team has benefited enormously from the cultural change, and also English football is much safer than it used to be. The problem is we don't have an atmosphere in the stadium, basically. And as I said, and fans don't feel part of the culture. So at the end of the day, how much of a stake do we really have? I mean, we're more consumers rather than members.
No, that's an interesting take. I haven't been to football in the UK, so I can't really answer for that, but I will trust your word for it. But obviously when you have, skin in the game, it's more interesting.
It definitely is. And I think that has helped to overcome a lot of the cultural reservations and also linguistic barriers, which, of course, at the end of the day has been my work, was to try to make German football and the German language more accessible here, Marcus.
Yeah. So, I mean, for someone who's followed the Bundesliga now for, since the 1990s, how has the league's evolution been like? How's it been? Some, highlights over the years that you remember?
Boy, well, I started going to Bundesliga when I was a small child. I was probably about 11, 12 years old when I first went to my first game in Borussia Dortmund. It was actually an indoor tournament, which they used to have in the Westfalenhalle in Dortmund. And it was basically Bundesliga teams playing out, the snowy period, which you have in Sweden as well, in kind of December, January, February time. In Germany, of course, they have a 1 month break, Winterpause. And in that time, basically, nowadays, the clubs will travel very much for international games. But back in those days, they used to have a lot of indoor tournaments, basically. And, an indoor stadium, or sorry, not indoor stadium, but indoor hall, it's very close, the whole thing. So I remember as a 12-year-old going to the Westfalenhalle to watch the game and sitting literally on the bench next to the players of BVB. And, as a little kid, I was just so enthusiastic. I mean, how could it be possible that you could get so close to the players when in England we just don't have that culture? And that culture of openness is something that I've experienced again and again, because Dortmund has an annual Christmas party where basically the fans meet the players, and the players get behind the bar and serve the drinks and stuff like that. And Dortmund has an end of season football tournament for the fan clubs, where 50 fan clubs every summer get to play against each other in the stadium. And I would say, to be honest with you, that those are the things that really stick in my mind. Those are the things that really live on in my heart, in terms of my sense of what German football is about, what Bundesliga is about, what BVB is about. Of course, there have been some sensational football matches. Just what is it? The week before last, I was in Lisbon when Niko Kovac, our new coach, had his real big breakthrough, the 3-0 against Sporting Lisbon. And the 4,000 of us who were actually out there went out on a wing and a prayer, because Dortmund had really been playing some very bad football under Nuri Sahin, and we had no idea what to expect from Niko Kovac. And in fact, his first couple of games were not good. But then we go out and we put in a second half of a performance which was absolutely unbelievable. And to be in a beautiful place like Lisbon, which I'm sure in the sunshine, in February, and the whole city was black and yellow. It felt like it was just an absolutely awesome experience. So I think the beauty of Borussia Dortmund nowadays is that being such an international team as well, we had Rafa Guerreiro in our side, who's a big Portugal international player, but also English players like Jude Bellingham, who's now at Real Madrid, Jadon Sancho, and so on. People can relate to this football club because, it's such an international team as well as international fan base. And so wherever you go with Dortmund, there's always a fan club. There's always other fans who are excited and really thrilled to see the club. And to be honest with you, we need more than one Borussia Dortmund to meet the demand around the world for this football club. So, I love it. I've seen so many games now. I must have been to 500-600 games, which for an English guy is an awful lot of BVB games.
Yeah, for sure. And for the Liga, for the Bundesliga itself, there has been some business deals done. So I would know that fairly recently, the CVC deal with the Bundesliga.
Yeah, the CVC deal was, in fact, not done. It was a proposed deal which had worked out in Ligue 1 and La Liga in Spain, and basically their experience was that it got them out of the pandemic, but it basically put them straight back into debt again. And hence, Real Madrid and Barcelona were pushing very hard for this European Super League, in my opinion, to get out of that black hole, that financial hole. So at the end of the day, I think what's really clear, Marcus, I think you can sense it from what I'm saying, is that German football is a lived experience. German fandom is a lived experience. German fan football club membership is a lived experience. And that's only possible because you're a member and you have a stake in it, and you have a stake in the say through the annual general meeting and other, polls that are done of the members and so on, where they basically take into account the opinions. For example, when you come along with a big investment deal like that, the first thing the German fans were thinking was, look, are they going to change the kickoff times, which is something which has happened in England, where we've basically got games going on a Monday night, on a Tuesday night, etc., at all sorts of weird hours, like a game kicking off at 5:30 in the afternoon. It's almost impossible to get to those games, etc. So, the Germans have been very fierce about saying that, for example, is one thing that they don't want. Then the other fear is that, if you tie yourself up with a big venture capital deal like that over a period of 10, 15 years, you basically are letting them in to influence all different aspects, including potentially the 50+1, which is the exact thing that the German fans don't want to lose. So yes, undoubtedly, Germany has suffered from the pandemic. They've suffered from the energy crisis, from the Ukrainian war, and so on. They've been hit very heavily by that because of the price of oil and gas and so on. But at the end of the day, whilst we still can maintain independence in German football, whilst the German football clubs can still rely on massive membership bodies, while they can still rely on homegrown industries to support the football clubs, I think that's always going to be their preference. So I wasn't at all surprised to see basically that they walked away from a very large cash injection in the interest of maintaining the neutrality and the independence of German football. And it's been a universally popular decision that was taken basically to walk away from that. So it didn't happen in Germany.
So, but it's still a very interesting case. And I mean, because the commercialization of leagues and they are trying to get it out to a broader audience and what that means in times of other players entering and be able to say no there and stay true. It's a tough decision, but it seems like it was the right decision.
Oh, I think it was undoubtedly the right decision. And, when you look at a club like Borussia Dortmund that has a small army of sponsoring companies at different levels, maybe up to 1,000 different companies, from small to medium-sized enterprises to very large international companies that take a stake in the business and so on. You can see that basically they're very, very committed to that way of doing things. And not every decision is going to be popular. This year, a deal was done with an armaments company that brought in a very substantial amount of money to Borussia Dortmund. And that has had massive repercussions amongst the fans who basically, don't want to recognize the reality, which is to some degree, Germany is an industrial country and is an armaments manufacturing company. And so therefore, we, coming from the region of Dortmund, of the Westphalia, of the Rhine, the Ruhr Valley, Ruhrgebiet, which is a highly industrial area, at the end of the day, it's obvious that some of those armament companies are going to be in that area. And so those companies are actually going to want to be sponsors of Borussia Dortmund. But do the fans want to be part of this sort of, industrial military complex? No, they absolutely don't want to.
The German Federation made a deal with Nike. How was that process like?
Yes, the DFB made a deal with Nike. Again, controversial. Look, I don't think that German football fans are any less enthusiastic about the extraordinary designs and the global reach of a company like Nike. I mean, I'm involved with a club called 1. FC Mülheim, who is a 6th-tier football club, which I've been involved with for 5 years. And each year we order our football kits, and the kids want Nike. They always want Nike. Last year we managed to bring in Irea, which is an Italian company. But the howls of consternation, the children, the young players, they want to wear major sports brands like Puma and so on. And Nike are a really, really popular company in Germany. But at the end of the day, there's something very special about post-war Germany. I studied German history as my first degree. And Adidas is one of those companies, Adidas and Puma. They basically are these post-war companies. The Dassler brothers, Rudi and Adi, they basically started these two companies and they built them into international brands which have huge recognition, which are uniquely defined in a way, I would say, from their culture in terms of being quite German brands and German success stories. And the German national team and the DFB, 4 times world champions since the 1950s, likewise is a German success story in sport. And so I guess for the German national team to move over to a company like Adidas, to move over to an American company like Nike, unlike the Three Lions, here in England, we have Umbro and smaller brands, Umbro, Admiral, and so on, which are British brands, but we don't have brands as big as Puma and Adidas. So it wasn't an obvious thing to do. And I think a lot of the fans basically felt like, why abandon a partnership that goes back 60 years, more than 60 years with Adidas? Personally, I'm a massive Adidas fan. I only buy Adidas given the chance. And I think it's going to be very, very exciting to see, what Nike does with the brand, whether they're able to enliven the brand, whether they're able to, do very much exciting and new designs and so on, and able to enliven and get even more people wearing the DFB shirt, the German football shirt. So I think it's a very interesting experiment, but whether it will go beyond 4 years, we will see. And I think, again, the reason for the decision was simply based on finances, coming out of the pandemic and so on. Even the DFB had got themselves into some minor debts, which they wanted to get out of. And Nike offered them 40% more money than Adidas. And, they just simply had to go with the money. But then remember, of course, Marcus, that there's a very, very strong interest in American sports in England, in Germany. Basically, the NFL have matches taking place in Germany. There's a marketing deal with the NFL where basically there's an exchange between the NFL and the DFB where they're basically learning from each other in terms of marketing and promoting. That's been going on for a couple of years. And the German National Federation has also done a deal with an agency to promote German football out in the States. And, there's an awful lot going on, basically. So I think the Germans have a very realistic perspective, which is they know what they're really good at is making things, but what they're not so good at is marketing things. And that's why they come to countries like England and America, which are traditionally really, really good at selling things, basically. And yeah, as I said, I think it's going to be very exciting to see what Nike do with the German brand. But personally, being a German purist, as you can tell, somebody who's just really loves German football, I would much rather see them wearing Puma or Adidas.
I understand that. But as you said, interesting to see in the next few years if Nike can do that and if there will be an extension or if they're going back to Adidas again.
Yeah, I understand. I think it's a 4-year contract. So we'll just have to see basically what happens after that.
Something else that I maybe haven't asked you that you would like to mention on this topic?
I think you've covered it very well. You've covered the fan experience. You've covered the traditions, the history. You've covered the quality of the fan experience. You've covered why basically we took the whole notion of promoting German football and BVB here to the UK. We've covered so much in such a short space of time. It's an absolutely brilliant conversation. And I'm so glad that you're open to people who are entrepreneurial and activistically minded and who are doing things from the heart and from a pure passion place. And trust me, I can tell you one thing, Marcus, every article I write, every event I organize, every fan party I organize, every podcast I record, every YouTube channel I get involved with, every friendly match I organize between Dortmund fans and fans of English clubs, every trip I organize out to Dortmund, every time somebody approaches me for tickets, I'm doing it with absolute enthusiasm. I just really, I love what German football stands for. The core values are really where it's at in terms of just putting your heart in it. And, it's special. It's very, very special in my opinion.
Yeah, and I mean, your passion is shining through and really clear to me and to the listeners. And thank you so much for taking the time to jump on Sports Management Podcast, Ben. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the chance to speak with you, Marcus.
Thank you for listening to the Sports Management Podcast. Please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any upcoming episodes. Also, feel free to leave a comment about what you thought about this episode. If you want to get in contact with me, send an email to sportsmpodcast@gmail.com or hit me up on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram @sportsmpodcast.
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.